We want to make good TV. What's the most compelling story? Oh, it's like something horrible happened to this innocent person, and so let's vilify who we think this really bad person is.
Right.
And that is how we get caught up in this machine that eats people, that has done so for millennia.
Welcome to Criminal Injustice, the podcast that pulls back the curtains on America's broken legal system. I'm your host, Casey Krizman, defense attorney and former criminal defendant. I fight in the trenches for those who have been caught up in the machinery of the criminal injustice system. And in each episode, I sit down with experts, advocates, and community leaders who are with me in the trenches, fighting the system and working to make the lives of the criminally accused better every day. We don't just complain about the situation. We focus on solutions and concrete actions we all can take to help fix this broken system. The fight against criminal injustice starts now. And here we are with another episode of Criminal Injustice, this time with Eric Faddis, a wrongful death, personal injury, and criminal defense attorney here in Denver. He's a rising star in the community and is quickly becoming one of the preeminent attorneys for folks facing significant legal issues. He's the founding member of Varner Faddis, was previously a district attorney, and worked for Springer Steinberg before starting his own law firm. He recently won an acquittal for a wrongfully accused father who was accused of killing his infant daughter, and that individual, Sean Jones, and you saved his life.
Oh gosh, well, I'm not sure about all of that, but thank heavens he is free.
Yes.
And he is reuniting with his family. And these are all things that seemed like impossibilities like a matter of months ago. And so thank heavens he is in a good spot. He is such an upstanding parent, member of the community. He's a preschool director. He's a cheerleading coach. Can't say enough good things about him. And just so saddened that his government kind of went after him in such an aggressive fashion and in a way that could have truly and in all practical senses ended his life.
And so let's talk about that. Set it up for us. Tell us where it happened, or where the allegations were, where you were before going to trial. Why did they have their teeth into this?
Yeah, totally. So this was in Douglas County, Colorado. The elected DA down there is George Brockler. He actually personally handled the trial, which was fun. So, going into what happens about 3 years ago is Sean Jones has a 5-year-old daughter, and he also has a 2-month-old infant. So he comes home one night, he's feeding the infant. Infant is sort of acting a little unusual, brings in his wife, says, hey, come take a look at this. The wife says, I think there's some swelling. So I don't know what's going on. They take the kid to the hospital immediately. And they're pleading for help. They're like, hey, what's happened? Please tell us what's happening with our kid. Is she going to be okay? What's going on? And so what happens is the medical personnel and then ultimately law enforcement really sort of begins pointing the finger at Sean. And they say, gosh, something's up with this kid. And dude, you were the last one with the kid. Must have been you. What did you do? Okay. And Sean's saying, hey, I didn't do anything. You tell me what's wrong with my kid. Help me. That's why I came here. Right. Ultimately, he is charged with child abuse resulting in death. The plea offer was 30 to 35 years in prison. And Sean said to me from the beginning, I didn't do this to my kid. And can you help me? Yeah. And so I just felt so honored to take on that kind of responsibility. And thank heavens we were able to get a complete acquittal at trial.
Thank heavens indeed. There's so much about injustice in what you just said, but talk to me kind of on the personal level. What was the process of your relationship with him in terms of he's a grief-stricken father?
Oh yeah, totally. So he's coming into this, his 2-month-old died. And so for any human being, that is going to be earth-shattering, right? But you can't deal with that. You can't grieve. You can't process that when, the state is using the full weight of their resources to call you a baby killer and to come after you.
Yeah.
And not only that, the police went to his work, called up his buddies, his family, and all said, "Hey, did you know Sean killed his baby?" And he's fired. He's terminated from his job. The police go after and successfully remove his 5-year-old daughter, even though she had nothing to do with this. And so he is just, dumbfounded because he was cooperative. He gave a full statement. He did a reenactment with the police. He let him into his home the day his baby died to reenact what had happened that night for these cops and coroner's investigators. And ultimately, he is just saying, I can't believe this could happen. I can't believe in America, he was a believer. He was a person who had kind of bought into the system
Yeah.
and said, God, I can't believe I am being railroaded in this way that could put me in a box for the rest of my life for something I didn't do.
Right.
And so
Well-
dealing with that is hard.
And not to bring empathy and then come back with the right hook. But it is often sometimes so impactful when the true believers are the ones who actually get railroaded, right? And they say, oh my gosh, the system is actually broken and it can happen to me.
Yes.
I wonder how many Sean Joneses didn't get you and didn't find you.
Oh, I think an alarming number. And I think you're totally right, Casey, that came through a trial because he testified. And he got up on that stand and he's telling those jurors, the people of his community, hey, look, I was there. I took my kid to the hospital immediately to seek help. When the cops came to me, I gave an interview after I think he had either little or no sleep at all over the course of 30 plus hours, didn't offer him food, didn't offer him water. He is beside himself with grief and worry and still gives this hours-long interview to police when his child dies, lets the government into his home to do a reenactment and ultimately goes to Children's Hospital and does everything that he can. And so he's telling the jury this. He's saying, hey, look, I have nothing to hide. I was trying to, I thought these folks were on my side. And it's such a stark realization to understand ultimately that they weren't.
And so I guess the next question I think most anyone listening here would wonder, when did the child die? What ended up happening there? And do you have any idea what actually occurred?
Yes. So the child was 2 months old. The child's cranium was in the 99th percentile. The child had likely had diabetes, a number of complicating factors. And so what happens at the hospital when Sean Jones takes his kid there is they ultimately do a CT scan. They see a skull fracture. And so they say, gosh, what could that be from? And keep in mind, the kid had no external injuries, no marks, no gash, no scrapes, nothing. But there's this skull fracture. That's concerning. There is a subdural hematoma, a brain bleed. That's concerning. And so, of course, law enforcement, ultimately, they've got a baby death. They've got pressure. They're feeling pressure from above. They're feeling pressure from the community. And so they kind of jump to this conclusion that this kid seemed to be doing well for a while. And then Sean, you went and fed him that night, her that night. And now she has a skull fracture that you must have bashed your baby's head in. And so we've got Sean Jones, who is a preschool director, who is a cheerleading coach, who has virtually no criminal history at all. He's in his 40s, a family man. They're saying that he is a psychopath who bashed his baby's head in. So that's the government's position. Thank heavens we found Dr. Jane Turner, forensic pathologist. She reviewed all of the records, all of the imaging. She ultimately determines that there was a pre-existing skull fracture. And this is actually relatively common or more common than people think with children. And ultimately they can sort of resolve on their own, but it can happen during birth trauma. It can happen during normal births, including C-sections. pre-existing skull fracture. There was this brain bleed, this subdural hematoma that was going on, she believes, for 4 to 6 weeks before the child died. So that brain bleed is pushing on the fracture, and it's over time, things are escalating. It became a medically critical event on the day that they took the baby to the hospital. And at that point, the fracture had displaced and widened, in part due to the pressure from the pre-existing brain bleed that had been there for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And so, thank God, Dr. Jane Turner, I love you, for getting to the truth on this, that all of the government's doctors completely missed, but that the jury wholly accepted in acquitting this man for doing nothing wrong in the death of his baby.
So, two-pronged question. Was Brockler not willing to listen to any of this? And then what did the jurors say afterward?
So, in fairness to George, I used to work for him. You used to work for him.
As did I. Yep.
You and I know, but he's a very
A little
talented.
bit before he broke fully bad, but nonetheless.
Fair, yeah. So he's a very talented trial attorney.
Absolutely.
And in fairness, he didn't get on the case until January 2025. Trial was in May 2025.
Okay.
So, but he had the expert disclosures. He had Dr. Turner's opinion. He had what really happened to this kid, and he chose to go forward anyway.
Right.
And I cannot respect that
he
decision.
took it in January, I'm so sorry. That's because he took over the jurisdiction in January.
Exactly.
Because he was not the elected of this new jurisdiction.
That's
so
right.
He couldn't have been involved beforehand, but he gets the case and he chooses to go forward.
Gets the case. Not only does he choose to go forward, chooses to put his name on it, put his signature on it. He's handling the trial.
Mm-hmm.
He's the lead attorney on the case. And so, for the entire pendency, I've been going to the DA and saying, hey, look, this guy didn't do this. Right. You've got to re-examine this. We've got to reconsider things. Something horrible is going to happen to this man potentially. Right. Their office, at which George Brockler was at the helm, was having none of it. And so we had to take it to a jury of Sean Jones's peers, a jury of citizens who looked at this. They don't have the blinders on. They don't have the tunnel vision. They don't have the echo chamber where everybody's saying
common sense.
Exactly, where everybody's all of one opinion and can't possibly be moved from it. These jurors saw the truth, thank heavens, and so we spanked Brockler in trial, and he called me a piece of shit twice.
You did,
in front of dozens, if not hundreds, of live viewers, and so that was a little feather in my cap.
Did you get a chance to speak to the jury afterward?
So we did talk briefly. What they had told us was going into deliberations, it was 11 not guilty, 1 guilty. And then it took those 11 about 8.5 hours or so to convince the one that not guilty was in fact the right outcome.
Great. It's a great place to start.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of so I think on sort of the theme of this podcast, it sort of echoes what I was saying about the case the whole time.
Yeah.
This is trash. This is, and not only that, but this is a severe injustice. My God, can't you see this? Can't you see what you're possibly going to do to this citizen, what his government's going to do to him in his own community? The jurors saw it right out of the gate in deliberations. Why in the world didn't this elected DA and his entire office listen? Why didn't they listen?
Right.
And I think that's one part that really bugs me.
So I've got other questions, but the truth is we could put it down right here. Cut to the bullshit, man. Here's the truth of it. We have a system that doesn't allow the truth to out unless everyone is all in. You can't let the truth go in front of a jury of your peers, and you have to dance around all these hammers that are trained to look for nails. You can't do that without risking your whole life.
Right.
How do we fix this?
Ooh, one thing we were talking about after this case with the defense bar was you have Children's Hospital, you have the government doctors who are on this case. They're all very like-minded, and they all come to oftentimes the same conclusion on a bunch of the same cases. So, where medical issues are hotly in dispute, do we have perhaps an independent medical review board.
Yes.
You have the child prosecution team at Children's Hospital, and they can have their opinion. But gosh, maybe we get some impartial body who's going to take a look at this, who doesn't get paid to give diagnoses of child abuse, who don't get paid gobs of money that they're afraid to talk about in trial.
Right.
And I'm talking about Dr. Andrew Sirotnik, when I asked you all those questions and you were too scared to tell the jury, bro, how much you get paid to do this. So I think an independent medical review board on death cases where there are material medical issues in dispute could be one step in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah. And I think, you saw me nodding down emphatically. I think that's absolutely something that seems to make sense, right? What's the downside to that? And in these cases where where there is, as you said, legitimate disagreement between the medical diagnoses.
Yep.
Throwing a wild card out here, what do you think about pretrial depositions in criminal cases? How do you feel about that? Have you ever thought about it before?
I think, why in the world not? Why do we not have those? We've had a civil system for hundreds of years that have those, because what they do is they allow you to better understand the other side's position. They allow you to better highlight potential weaknesses for the other side, for your case. You gain a more enriched understanding of the legal issues and what the witnesses might say at trial.
Yeah.
We do it in the civil justice system all the time. If I was able to pepper Dr. Sirotnik with questions, if I was able to go after these folks in depositions and perhaps illuminate for these prosecutors who have a ton of cases, hey, here are the real problems. You heard it from his mouth, not mine.
Right.
That could give us some traction in avoiding these types of potential injustices. So I think it's a great idea.
Well, and especially when, and I think you would agree with me, when you are able to depose somebody, you are able to get closer to the truth of what occurred. Whereas I think because we have such concern for protections of alleged victims, and there are legitimate victims and we need to protect them, but we also need to balance that with the search for justice and the search for truth.
Yeah.
And if truth could out more often by seeing what someone's going to say on the stand before all the chips are down, I don't know, it just seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Oh, totally. No,
So-
I'm with you.
So was he out of custody before trial?
Oh, thank heaven. So we were able, he was arrested. We were able to have his schedule bond posted before he saw a judge, and the prosecutors, got in there and went on their baby killer campaign to this judge saying, hey, bump this dude's bond up to $4 million. He could have been in a box for 3 years pending this case had we not taken swift action upon that arrest. So he was out of custody, which, as you know, makes it so much easier to defend a case, to acquire information, to build rapport, all of these things that are critical to success at the trial phase.
So how's he doing now?
He, all things considered, he's doing reasonably well. He's such a rock. He was so resolute during the trial. I swear, I'm biting my fingernails and freaking out. And I look over at him, and he is just sitting, not overly concerned, because he knew he didn't do this.
Right.
And so that's his demeanor. He maintains that. He's still fighting. If you can believe this, Casey, the government took away his child he had about a year after all of this went down with his deceased child. The new child, of course, had nothing to do with it.
Wow.
And after this full acquittal on the criminal side, which was the basis for taking his kids away, the state of Colorado and the Parker Police Department are still trying to keep Mr. Jones's children from him based on an allegation that was disproven at trial, which is disgusting.
How else can you disprove it at that point?
It can't be more disproved.
Right.
That's as much as you can do. Sean Jones can't do anything else. And so he's still fighting that fight, but thankfully this battle is behind him.
Amen to that. Amen. Well, I want to transition a little bit from the specific, and congratulations on that win.
Thanks, man.
And sure, he may have been a rock through that trial, but I can tell our viewers it is so stressful to have an innocent client at trial.
I, I'm still decompressing from that,
Yeah.
man. Because I'm as as an attorney, as you do this, I'm sure you've had this sense where as you go along, you can kind of get a good take on whether you think somebody's factually guilty or not.
Right.
And for this one, I was just so unbelievably convinced that he was innocent
Right.
because he was. So I've got, the weight on my shoulders of like this dude, if I screw this up, man,
Yeah.
this guy's looking at up to 48 years of prison. And so that was a tremendous stressor. And also, Casey, it was just me on the defense side, whereas
Yep.
the government has unlimited resources. They had George Brockler, the elected DA, amazing trial attorney, Danielle Jaramillo, great trial attorney, both Parker Police Department detectives.
Was Mark Bacher on it?
No, that detective wasn't, but there was a tech person they had, victim witness person, all of these little underlings helping them out.
Yeah.
And then you got little old me over there and Sean Jones, and we're fighting for our lives in there, man.
Well, and again, that also plays well with the jury too. And thank God
Oh,
they get to
yes.
bring their common sense in, right? Because you have the factual truth, and so you can't really screw it up. They get to bring their common sense and see through this. So thank goodness for all that. But let's bring it on a more macro level. And you're someone in Colorado and maybe nationwide who's known to not be afraid to make waves. You are willing to say and do things in order to make sure that justice and truth is heard. So, you're on TV, you're talking about all sorts of different cases. What type of vision, when you're on TV and in these interviews, what are you trying to bring to the table?
On the media side, and I've done about 400 plus media interviews now.
Right.
On that side of things, there's such oftentimes a feeling of, hey, we want to make good TV. What's the most compelling story? Oh, it's like something horrible happened to this innocent person, and so let's vilify who we think this really bad person is.
Right.
And so that's the narrative that gets views. And fine, I don't run a TV place; they can do what they want. But for me, I want to level that playing field. I want to make folks aware of things that they might not be aware of. Do you know that there's a whole science between false confessions? If a person, do you know there's a whole science between the unreliability of eyewitness identification?
Right.
When people hear when I'm on Nancy Grace and they say, oh, there's a witness who said they saw this guy at the bar with a woman who ultimately died. Yeah, it must have been him. Well, hold on a minute. That's going way too quickly. And that is how we get caught up in this machine that eats people, that has done so for millennia. And if we don't have folks who are pumping the brakes and even throwing a wrench in there here and there, that machine's going to keep going. And so I see myself as sort of going up against that machine.
That's great. And it's part of, as we say, we're trying to dismantle that criminal injustice system. But it's really just, in a lot of ways, we're trying to dismantle the stereotypes that come along with either the headline or the rushing to conclusions.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on something that I haven't had a chance to speak about on this podcast yet, but that's the P. Diddy trial.
Yeah.
And so you were mentioning to me before the show here that you sometimes were inserting doubt in those conversations. And I'm broad strokes. Can you tell us what you were saying, where you were kind of enlightening folks, and how that was taken?
Oh, sure. So I covered the Diddy case, the federal criminal trial for Nancy Grace, ABC Live, News Nation, Newsmax, a bunch of different platforms. And what the story was in the beginning was that you've got this evil monster. And you've got this villain, and my God, have you heard about the unsavory things he's doing, and all of this, and that story plays, bro. That's how you make a show, and I get that. But when I would get up there were issues that I saw from the outset with the case. I mean, we have and believe me, I'm not condoning anything Diddy allegedly did. I'm not saying he's a solid, stellar dude. What I'm saying is where you've got an allegation of sex trafficking, and the facts on which that are based are kind of like a he said, she said sort of thing in a complicated years-long relationship
Right.
in which the alleged victim had admitted that a number of those encounters were consensual, but these ones, they said, were not. And so, I was raising issues like, hey, eh, they've got to prove that Diddy knew this stuff was not consensual and caused them to do it against their will anyways.
Right.
Well, if a dude had, or a woman or anybody had multiple consensual encounters with somebody, and then the individual never told them no, didn't tell them stop, didn't tell them, hey, I'm not doing this, and then he said you're doing it anyway.
Right.
With absent that, you got to prove his state of mind that he knew this was allegedly against their will. I don't know if you can do that.
Right.
And so I'm raising these questions on these programs, and I'm getting, just the stink eye from everybody.
Sure.
And but I think it's appropriate to inject in the conversation the other side of the coin.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, especially if, when we're looking at criminal charges beyond a reasonable doubt, highest burden in our land, the guy may be the devil, but how guilty is the devil? Right?
Right.
So it's clear you're focused on trying to bring justice and truth to a system that is fraught. And you've made national headlines, both recently and before. What is your vision for the future? What is next for you? How are you going to keep creating change?
Yeah. Casey, I thank heavens the media side of things has been successful. There's some momentum there. I'm hoping to continue to expand in that realm. Perhaps there is a podcast or a show or something on the horizon that might be in the future. But I think, with the advent of social media and our ability to listen, our ability to be heard, those things have been amplified a gazillion fold. And so I think folks like you and me are able to get messages out to our community that might not have heard these things before. And so I think that messaging piece, speaking up, and really highlighting issues that you and I see every day. Like I said, there are things with false confessions. There are things with false identifications. There are consent issues. There are socioeconomic issues that can influence prosecution regimes and that can influence cases individually.
Right.
I think letting the public know about those things and so that they have a more broad, enriched awareness of what really happens in this system,
Right.
as opposed to just, oh, it's good guys versus bad guys, let's lock all the bad guys up.
Right.
I think shifting away from that paradigm is important, and I think this is a big part of how we do it.
Well, and you're speaking truth to power and being unafraid to say it loud, unapologetically, and in caps, I think is, if nothing else, it is making people talk about the situation, because it isn't just good guys versus bad guys. And luckily, I'm hearing more and more when I tell folks I'm a defense attorney, I'm hearing thank you more often than I used to. Still not more than how could you ever
Go
do
in the
that?
right direction.
But look, you're helping change the paradigm. You're helping to let folks know that there is more to these stories than what is sensational. And I appreciate your effort and all of that. And I look forward to fighting with you in the future.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, and keep doing your thing, brother.
Thank you. Thank you.